There we go. Hi! So we just finished our first RWA New York City meeting for the month of February. And today I am actually doing my first video interview, and it is with my lovely president, LaQuette. So This is gonna be a challenge, you guys.
Interesting.
Yeah. So welcome. All right, so are we ready to do this?
I think so.
Okay, so first question. I always find author interviews kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
We only get to see one side of an author, which is always the polite side. Always. If you had an evil doppelganger, what detail would they enjoy revealing about you to the public that people would find surprising and possibly questionable?
Oh, I don't think I need an evil doppelganger. I have a kind of sort of an abrasive personality sometimes.
No.
Yeah, I do. It's not that it's my intent to be abrasive. It's just I am very steadfast in stating what my boundaries are and what the things I would like to take place. And I think some people aren't used to that kind of thing.
You keep it real.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So I do not have a filter sometimes, I think is probably what most would consider my, sometimes my mother says LaQuette, but the way you said it.
It's all about tone, how you say things.
So I think that's it, that I have no filter and that I have no problems voicing what I'm thinking. I try to be tactful because it's never my goal to hurt people intentionally, but
Absolutely.
But sometimes it's not always possible.
I feel you. Okay, so Roxane Gay asked Morgan Jerkins this question when she interviewed Morgan for Elle Magazine's February issue. When I read this question, I immediately thought of you.
Oh, God.
It's not a bad thing, LaQuette. It's a good thing. So yeah, I'm basically swiping Roxane Gay's question because it's Roxane Gay, and she does fantastic interviews. So your answers do not have to be limited only to romance authors, okay? So who are the Black women you read and who have nurtured your work on the page?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I was very fortunate in my reading education, I should say, with respect to romance. Because when I started reading romance at 16, the only thing that was really...
You started at 16?
At 16, which was... I'm 40 now, so you do the math.
I was late in the game. I started late with the romance.
It's been a good minute that I have been reading romance, and when I started, it was just Harlequin that was, running the dominating the industry at that point. And most of what I read was these wonderful, beautiful stories about white people falling in love, and
which is still the majority.
Which is still the majority,
market,
but
yeah.
I mean, at this point, we know that romance with characters of color written by authors of color actually exist. But at that point, I did not know that was not a thing. Like, that really was not a thing. People can pretend it's not a thing now, but it actually was not a thing back then. So after a while, I wanted to see some people on the page that kind of looked like me or had similar experiences to
I think everybody does,
upbringing.
but yeah.
And right around the 90s, when I was walking into my the mid to late 90s, walking into my own adulthood, I was able to come across books by Rochelle Allers and Brenda Jackson and Zane, and these women, and Sandra Kitt. I remember reading The Color of Love by Sandra Kitt.
That's been on my Kindle for the longest time.
Girl, read it.
Everybody talks about that as like their first romance book.
I read that book
as a woman of color
and knew
author.
That I was going to be writing interracial romance when I read that book, because I just felt like it was so beautifully written and so real.
Okay, pushing it up to the pile,
okay.
to the front of the pile.
So I really enjoyed it. And so reading those four women really just showed me, wow, like, there are some really tremendous stories that we can tell as authors of color about people of color, especially women of color. And I, as a woman of color, I of course loved the idea that we could have our own happily ever after. We could have successful relationships. We could have, all these wonderful things that make you go, oh, at the end of a romance novel, that those things were not specific to only Caucasian women. And so those 4 women, yeah, they did it for me. They still do it for me. I'm waiting for another Zane book. Zane, if you just so happen to come across this, holla at your girl, because I need... people talk about 50 Shades of Grey, and I'm not knocking it, but Zane,
Okay.
holla at your girl. Put something out there.
If that's not a push, Zane, I don't know what is. Write it for LaQuette.
I own every book that woman has put out.
Oh, wow. That's a true fan right there. Wow. That's dedication. Okay, so there are numerous misconceptions surrounding the romance genre. We know this already. Yeah. But what do you think is the common misconceptions about erotic romance, considering you're an erotic romance writer?
Ooh, there are many. One of the reasons, I mean,
you tell me what you've heard. I'll tell you what I've heard.
I've heard, I think there's a sleaze portion attached to it when people find out you write erotic romance, and so they assume that because you write erotic romance about women or men, because I write both gay and straight romance, expressing themselves sexually and being open about their expression of their sexuality, that somehow means that you as the author are open for anything and everything, and people proposition you with the strangest things, and I'm like, dude, I don't know you like that.
Early days. Yeah, I had to
don't make assumptions about me like that.
Yeah.
So I think people don't get to really separate. They don't separate the work from the person, and they think that they don't understand that writing is a creative process, and just because a person writes something doesn't mean that they are actively, secretly hoping to live that life or actually living that lifestyle. I mean, I write a lot about cops. I'm not a cop, never wanted to be.
Really?
One. Yeah. So,
aren't you all of your characters?
Nah, the job works for the stories that I'm telling, and so that is why you'll see several. And I don't know, for some reason people like my romantic suspense, and so you're always going to have that Law and Order element in it. And Law and Order
if I had the skill set right now, I insert the Law and Order.
Yeah. And I love that show. I love the original. So that's why you see a lot of cop work in my books. But personally, I mean, it's a job that I don't know that I have the skill set to ever do. So I never would have thought of myself to jump into a profession like that. So just because someone writes erotica does not mean they're 2 steps away from selling ass on the corner.
This is where I would put an asterisk next to the question and say, no selling ass on the corner is happening.
That's pretty much what happens.
Yeah. I've heard some of the same things, I mean, I do incorporate a little bit of myself into my stories, but a reader will never know what portion it is.
For me, it's usually my attitude. The attitude that my characters carry is usually how I think about the world and see the world. But I don't think I've lived, with the exception of probably Sinai, who is a registered respiratory therapist, which is what I used to be. She's probably the closest I've come to, because we were both mothers and both worked in healthcare. But I've never, dated a mob boss, and I've never had a secret baby by him, and I've never faked my own death.
You're still alive?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I've come to learn that I judge people based on their answers to this question. And if you say the wrong thing, I'm totally going to judge you. So, in your opinion, what's the best breakfast main course? Waffles, pancakes, or French toast?
Oh man, see it's not a straight answer to that. I'm gonna tell you why. Okay, so
LaQuette,
I love French toast.
There can only be one.
I love French toast, but it just takes way too much effort to make.
It does.
Right? So there's too many steps to that, and when you have small people living in your house, you just don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
So, and especially when you have small people that are picky eaters, you just want something simple and quick that everybody.
I don't even have tiny humans in my house, but that still takes too long to make. I feel
so, as much as I like French toast, unless I'm going out
You won't order.
I'm not ordering.
Yeah.
Waffles, I can just use the same pancake batter that I'm going to use to make the pancakes and pour it on my waffle iron, which God bless the sweet soul that gave it to me for my housewarming gift, because it takes me all of 5 minutes and I've got a soft, beautiful Belgian waffle. And,
oh, wow. That's a great gift. That's a fantastic gift. I need a housewarming party in my life. I need to move to a house, but yeah.
You get good things.
That is fantastic. Okay, so your final answer is?
Waffles. I'm going to say waffles.
I'm still judging you because that was not the right answer. But I'm going to let you have it.
Thank you.
Okay, so you recently signed a contract with Dreamspinner Press.
Yes, I did. Yay, Dreamspinner.
DSP. Okay, so what are you hoping to bring to Dreamspinner readers with your take on erotic romance?
I'm bringing Brooklyn, baby. I am a Brooklyn girl to my heart. It doesn't matter where I live in this world. Brooklyn is always you. When you ask me where I'm from, I'm always going to say Brooklyn.
I can't say that I planned this, but we're both Brooklyn girls.
So it's one of the reasons why I started writing, and when I began writing, I was writing just straight romance because at the time I didn't know that gay romance was a thing. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I started writing romance was because I wanted people to have that experience of what it was to see people of color fall in love. Whether it was a person of color themselves reading it and seeing that representation, authentic representation, mm-hmm. positive representation of themselves on the page, or whether it was someone who was not a part of the community who wanted to learn or just needed to see that other folks fall in love too. I wanted to see women that looked like me on the page, living like I was living, lived, and loved the way I did. And I wanted, since I couldn't find a lot of that, I decided I needed to contribute to that. Because my answer is always, if there's a problem, I have to first ask myself, what am I doing to address the problem? So I can't just be mad because the publishing industry doesn't have enough, POC romances. I've got to actually contribute, to the solution of that problem. That's just how my brain thinks.
I am right there with you.
So when I began reading gay romance, I fell in love with these beautiful stories, like these really amazing stories of people falling in love that were having the same experiences that I was having, except they were gay. Mm-hmm. And I was falling in love with these stories and learning about their community. And one of the things that I noticed as I was reading is that almost every book that I read was a story about white male characters. Mm-hmm. And if there was a person of color, that usually the perspective of the book was not told from that person of color's perspective. It was all the white hero's perspective, mm-hmm. and how he thought about that person of color. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like, and sometimes that would be a little bit skewed because you didn't really get the sense of who those people were because they were just kind of like cookie cutter.
Yeah,
and so, and I remember reading Elin Harris's book.
Yes.
And, learning about the whole B-boy community, mm-hmm. and I was just like, why are these stories, why do I not see these stories in gay romance and male-male? And so I started flipping through the publishers and looking and seeing that all I saw predominantly, that's not to say that there were no books that featured men of color or at least one person of the makeup being a man of color falling in love.
I mean,
but
they're there.
They're there, but
and
very...
You're right. They're there and they're present in the stories, but rarely is it ever told from their perspective. And they're not always secondary characters. The same can be said for, male-female romance. A person of color can be present, but they're not
the focus of the story.
Focus of the story.
And
so I understand.
I wanted to tell a story, and not only that, if they are extremely prominent people from extremely prominent wealthy places, and that's great. But I wanted to see some stories about men that grew up in Brooklyn, or men who would be just as comfortable chilling with the homies on the corner in the hood as they would in the boardroom. So I decided to start writing men of color, and the first book I wrote was called Love's Changes, which is a spinoff to my Queens of Kings series. One of the main heroines has a gay cousin who's married and who has had some problems in his marriage, and so that book explores his relationship with his husband and how they get to kind of rebuild themselves after a really rocky last 5 years of their marriage. And what I loved about this book is that it has some really amazing reviews.
Thank you for reviewing. An author loves that.
It really did get some really amazing reviews, and one of the things that I've been most proud of about that book is, you know, people have consistently said this is a story about two grown-ass men who are
grown-ass men. I love that.
Who are having realistic troubles in a marriage, and who have had some really tragic things happen to them, and they're trying to find, because most romances start and lead up to the happily ever after. Well, these two have already had their happily ever after, and it's fallen apart. And so, you know, I wanted to show that, you know, all relationships, that this relationship, because I honestly believe love is love is love. So if straight people can have these amazing romances that fall apart and then try to come back together again, why can't we do the same for our gay men? And why can't we do the same for our gay men of color? But as much as it was critically acclaimed by industry people, I did not find that people were very welcoming to that book. And honestly, I knew it was because both heroes were Black men. And so I guess initially I was a little put off by that, but I also felt that I'm still going to keep telling the stories that I'm going to tell. And I had the opportunity to meet with the editor-in-chief at Dreamspinner, and had a conversation with her about some work I wanted to do. And she was very accepting of it and very impressed with the idea. And one of the things I always do as a woman of color writing characters of color, I always let people know from jump what you're going to see in my book. I let you know that you're going to have Black people as at least half of the couple, and you're going to get a perspective from that person of color. And that you're going to see a little bit of Brooklyn in my book. So if this is not something that you want to sell, or you don't feel that your readership is going to pull from, then I might not be the work for you, because I'm not changing that. I'm not going to change the fact that people need to see representation in all categories, and I'm not going to basically whitewash a book to make it more marketable, I guess some people might say. And I was very fortunate, and I have been very fortunate in my entire writing career, that everyone that I've made this statement to, that whenever I query, this is an interracial romance with this person, and I break down their ethnic background and who they are as a character, as a person, and to let you know if this is something you really want to do. And credit to Dreamspinner, they were like, hey, let's do this. And I was I'm very excited. I'm working on it actually right now, about halfway through it, and I can't wait to actually finish it so that I can get into edits so that it will be better than what it is now, because I really do like these two characters, and I'm very fortunate to get the opportunity to bring it to the masses. So thank you, Dreamspinner.
Be on the lookout. We could just keep going on with that question forever, but because we have so many more to get through, but I'm like, that could be a whole dialogue within itself.
True.
How do you define love?
How do I define love? Love is home.
That's such a good answer.
Love is home. So when I feel comfortable, when I feel that it's okay for me to express myself, when I feel that I'm supported unquestioningly, that is love for me. Those are the same things those are the things that make me understand that this is someone who really cares about me. So if I tell you that I have to write between this hour of the day and that hour of the day, and you call me every day smack dab in the middle of that time, that says to me that you don't really love me, because you don't love, you don't respect what I'm setting up. So people, you know, one of the things I try to express in my writing is I try to have people connect on a real basic situation in terms of like family. My books, even though they really focus very much so on the main characters, and it's really, even though I have ensemble cast members, you don't see a lot of the ensemble cast members throughout the entirety of the book. For the most part, it's just the two heroes, or the hero and heroine. But at some point in the book, you can bet that you're going to meet at least one half of the family. And it's usually going to be some crazy family shenanigans going on.
Because whose family's perfect,
exactly.
Right?
And I find that people connect to my books because of that. I really think that's one of the reasons why my readership connects to my books, because they know that they have a family member that acts out. We all have that one family member that comes to Thanksgiving and acts out.
Yeah,
we all do. And so I just put it in a book. And my family members that are in the book, they really, they bring the levity into whatever the situation is. So for me, and that's a very much like my own family. We are very loud and crass when we get together. We can't go to public spaces together because we're a hot mess. I know, thank God.
I know LaQuette's family that's watching is clutching the pearls like, she's not talking about me.
They're like, we don't go out a lot, so my house is usually the meeting spot. People will come from all parts and hang out at my spot, because that's how we are. We're loud and we're raucous, and we love being around each other, and we love that noise and that friction, and we love all of that. And so I try to put that in my books, because to me that's what love feels like.
You are giving some fantastic answers. Okay, this one you're gonna be like, what? Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I'm a little frightened by that question. And what the hell made you come up with that?
You gotta keep people on their toes.
I don't know. I'm kind of afraid of animals. I'm not an animal person, so I don't know. And if it was one horse-sized duck, then maybe I could get away from it. I feel like I could probably run. But if a bunch of them are after me, then they might get me. Like one of them might get me. So I'm going to say the one.
All right. What's your favorite snack to chomp on while you're writing?
Oh my God. Almonds, which I don't really like the taste of so much, but I like the crunch. For some reason, crunchy things get my brain going when I'm writing. So almonds, popcorn, kettle corn. I have a thing. It's really, I really shouldn't be eating as much as I do. Kettle corn with like the chocolate drizzle over.
Oh Lord Jesus!
It's really, which is why I have been over the last couple of weeks going to the gym 4 days a week. It's not a good thing, but it helps. It gets the words down.
Whatever works, people. If it's kettle corn drizzle with chocolate, write all the things. If you were to create a signature drink, what would be in it, and what would you call it?
Oh my gosh. We would definitely have to have some sort of fireball in it. Ooh, that stuff is cool. It tastes like big red gum. I'm really not an alcohol person, but I loves me some fireball.
Then you would love Goldschlager.
Fireball, and I don't know what else to add to fireball. I just like it straight. And I don't know. I don't know what to call it.
I don't know what to call it. A signature drink by LaQuette. Okay, last question. What's the best book series you've read?
Oh, damn. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go for two series here. I can't pick one.
That's cheating,
but it's the truth. The Brooklyn Center series by Avril Ashton is, when I tell you, ooh,
yeah, I've read. Avril, you can write a sex scene, girl.
Girl. And let me tell you something. I can write a sex scene, but Avril got me. I don't even try. I do not like that. That girl has an amazing concept of filth and how it works and to make it sexy.
Team filth.
And I'm all for it. Like whatever. I always tell her every time she puts out a book, if I come up pregnant, I'm coming for you for child support because it was you. It was your fault. Because it never fails, and this could be TMI, but every time I read one of her books, I'm looking for, where are you? Where? Like, don't read her books alone.
That is an honor.
Don't do it. And when I need something to really tug at my heartstrings, Terry Michael's Faith, Love, and Fidelity series. That series is a tearjerker and will make you feel all the things that you never thought two grown men could feel. And I love that series. I read it at least once every couple of months. I really love that series.
That's so sweet. Of course, I couldn't let you leave without a bonus question.
Sure.
Have you ever tried BDSM? If not, would you?
Personally, no, it's not my thing. I think that I would probably laugh if my partner tried to, it would just, I would not give it the seriousness that it should have, it should be given. In my books, I've never written it, only because I feel like a lot of the books that I've read that are supposed to be BDSM have really been borderline quasi like rape fantasy. Ooh. And I don't think that is.
Hey,
if that's your thing, that's your thing. But
yeah.
For me, it's not my thing. And like a lot of times, when I read what is classified as categorized as BDSM, like an Amazon, I don't feel like it's really doing service to the community, and that
true.
It doesn't really take in all of the considerations that one should take. The only person whose book I've read that really did was a book by LaQuette. I cannot remember the name, but it's a series about rock stars and one transgendered lawyer. And as crazy as that sounds, it is an amazing series, and it really
I wonder how they met, a rock star and a lawyer.
Well, no. The rock star has his own story, but he's connected by his lawyer, and then the lawyer gets her own story. The lawyer's transgendered and is married to a gay man. So it's there's a lot of like question of how can we still remain if I'm not a gay man, if I'm really a woman who's just been born into a man's body.
Oh, that's interesting.
I
love LaQuette. Shout out to LaQuette.
It's a very interesting book, and I loved every bit of, not just the book, but the entire series. And I'm sorry, LA, that I cannot remember this exact series, the name right now, but it escapes me. But it was an amazing series.
It's okay. I'll tell her to watch this, and she's gonna like put a link right up under this, like buy this book.
Buy anything that says LaQuette. She's amazing.
She is quite amazing. She is. LA, I love you, but you know this already. And this concludes our interview. I want to thank LaQuette for being my very first interview.
Thank you for
that was
having
on
me.
Camera. Y'all, there's a lot more of these to come. Stay tuned. Thanks for being with us.